My homage to that being who is devoid of all misapprehension, free from the feeling of me and mine, above desire and hate, and bereft of all fear. My homage to that being who is in perfect quiescence and peace, calm beyond all attachments, above all cravings, who has got perfect knowledge of the transcendent self and is self-contained. My outer self, the body, is in thee. You are present in my inner self, O Lord. You manifest yourself in my inner heart, free from all perturbations and worries. Om, 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 my all is in you, and you are present in my inner self. Please direct me to be mindful of thee. May I be led by my spirit. May I get peace of mind. May I have constant remembrance of thee and of my purified self, dwelling only in thee. Om, Om, Om. This is the invocation to the Kaivalyapada, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a study guidebook for Book 4, translation and commentary by Baba Haridas, who just passed, actually about a week or so after my teacher, Shogo Namkai Norby, passed. So be careful if you want to read these Yoga Sutras. These are really powerful and will probably change you, will definitely change you, if you're in the slightest bit perceptive and receptive. That one would be good for step 3, if you wanted to think about it that way. I know that has a little bit of a deity kind of an overtone to it, but you can learn to filter and interpret and adapt. And if you listen to anything that I write, read, or say, you'll definitely know that that is possible. So going into, anyways, Darren Littlejohn here, going into
episode 38 of the 12-Step Buddhist Podcast.
The 5 precepts. I vow not to engage in sexual misconduct. This is a lead-in to that interview with Dr. JoJo, who is a therapist who specializes in these issues, these topics. I'll let him explain all that to you here in just a couple seconds. I'm excited to give you a couple of links for podcast listeners, especially just for you. Amazing that so many people love this podcast, so thank you for listening. Please share it, like and share it. Leave a review up on iTunes for me. It is on Spotify. It is on YouTube. So I've got free things for you. You can write these links down, or you can just sign up on my site. You'll get emails about these various free things. But the first one is the free meditations that I record at the intro to yoga classes. I've got several years worth of those. Got a bunch of them there right now, and I've got a bunch more to add. And you can go to the 12stepbuddhist.com/free-meditations to receive that. The 12stepbuddhist.com free-meditations. So that's the first one. And I should have a pretty quiet space here for recording podcasts in the new digs, the new shaman temple. And yeah, there you go, pretty good. So the other one is free advanced reader copy for the Yoga of Letting Go. The link to that is bit.ly or bit.ly /letting go arc, A-R-C, LETTINGGOARC. So need reviews of the books, so I give the books away for free. Please read it and review it. It's a couple-hour read, Kindle short read, which is the Yoga of Letting Go is about resolving grief and loss, and trauma. It's pretty powerful, pretty kick-ass work. I'm really, really proud of this one. So I'd love it if you'd give it a read thoughtfully and give it a couple sentences and 5 stars up on Amazon. That'd be awesome. And the other one is Perfect Practice, 2nd edition. I wrote this book in 2012 based on a retreat. And these were just basically retreat notes, but I went through the whole thing, rewrote it all, added a bunch of stuff, gave it an awesome new cover. So the 2nd edition is really geared towards beginner's practice of mindfulness using the 6 paramitas, or the practice of the perfections, hence the title Perfect Practice. So please give that a read. I didn't get any new reviews on that one yet. So it's bit.ly Perfect Practice ARC, bit.ly /Perfect Practice ARC. And really excited about this infographic. I'm finishing up in the inner game of yoga, Yoga Transformation series, which the 3 books are the Yoga of Self-Compassion, Book 1, Book 2, The Yoga of Letting Go, and Book 3, The Yoga of Being a Badass. I'm finishing up The Yoga of Being a Badass, and I've got a very cool infographic. I created an acronym, how do you spell badass, and you can get that free infographic. It's really well done, really beautiful, and it's absolutely free. So go to bit.ly/spell badass. That's bit.ly/SPELLBADASS. Okay, there's all your free stuff. Feel free to share that with anyone, and please enjoy this podcast episode, and I'll see you next week with the next in the series. All right, Dr. JoJo, that's what I'm calling you. Introduce yourselves to us. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, my name is JoJo. Everybody calls me JoJo Bear, but my name is JoJo De Rodrigo, and I'm a somatic sex coach and educator.
Yeah, so the reason why we met is through a mutual friend, someone who has been a reader of mine for probably, at least 10 years, I'm assuming, a long-term reader, and I had posted that I'm looking for people to talk to about sex, and I got a ton of offers. Not the kind I'm looking for usually, but I'm getting some nice podcast offers. And I thought that you had really cool qualifications, and I was really excited to talk about this topic. So the topic, I want to just frame it in a context, and anything and everything you have to say is awesome. So we have sexual misconduct in Buddhism under our 5 precepts, or our 5 Buddhist lay vows. And, the vow is to keep our karma good so that we can be on an even keel, have a calm mind, practice compassion, and be, in the meditation space where we're, evolving and developing our practice to the point where we become completely liberated from suffering like Buddha. So we have these vows, and there are many ways of looking at them, and various levels of vows that you can take, and there's a lot to talk about on that. But the reason why this is on my mind is because of these the spiritual teacher sort of scandals that have been going on in the Buddhist community, and obviously in the yoga community. We've had a lot of these, and I'm assuming that you're familiar with some of those stories. We could talk about it, but I just wanted the interesting idea that I have on this is when I did my AA 4th step, it said some stuff about we don't want to put a person on the strict salt and pepper diet or something. We want to offer them no flavor for their fare, which is really, who knows even what that means. This is our AA way of saying be good sexually and don't hurt other people, but choose your own ideal. And your sponsor would choose the ideal with you, and your home group would tell you if you were messing up, if you're like trying to bang the newcomer or whatever you're doing, and so that's kind of all we have. But this is a different time. It's a different framework. There's a lot available. Let me rephrase this. There are a lot of options available, and there are a lot of ways of exploring and being. There are a lot of ways of being a sexual being. And I want to know from someone who's educated and an educator in this area, how can we open our minds and our hearts and our souls about what sexual conduct is, and where is the line between that and the sexual misconduct? Because, back in the day, I've got a yoga teacher, Andre, fantastic guy, gay man, has said many times to us, I don't know what the age was, but I think he didn't come out until he was like 30. And he said he hated himself, and he couldn't be gay. And that could have been seen as sexual misconduct in some time and space, being gay. But that's who you are as a human being. How is that misconduct? Well, obviously it's not. We know that now. So I want to look at that kind of a definition, if you even want to define it. I want to hear from you about, what are some of these alternate sort of sexual lifestyles that people participate in, the poly scene, the tantra scene, and all this kind of stuff. I don't know anything about it. I'm pretty plain vanilla. But I really do want to know, and I want to help my listeners and readers understand, and maybe let go of some of their shame core a little bit if they can. But understand what is a safe and sound idea. I think I said enough about it to frame it. So, what are your thoughts? Are you familiar with some of these stories, like Noah Levine and the Sakyatrizin, not Sakyatrizin, but the Sakyong Mifam from the Shogam Trungpa lineage of Shambhala? What's going on, and how can we understand things better?
Yeah, I mean, I know, and first of all, like, you have so much to say that my mind's racing. I have so much to answer. But the thing is, I'm aware of a lot of the behavior of people, especially what happens is, as we know that when we get into places of power or think we're in places of power, how ego is, we're put into this predicament, right? There's this thing where we have our natural needs, right? And the way I look at sex is that it's so part of everyone, right? And there's so many different. It actually, when you were mentioning about what Bill W. wrote in the big book about the straight pepper diet, or the salt and pepper thing, which I think actually there is a little bit of it is relevant to an extent these days, is that sex has been something that's so provocative for people because it's something that we don't talk about as much, right? It's something that is so personal. It's so part of a person, and especially in our society right now here, I would say more like in the States, it's something that, there's this veneer of shame around it. Like, we want to talk about it. And so a lot of times what I tell people is, and the most important thing, especially working with people, like when I work one-on-one with people, I make sure that we get the whole consent, the whole permission. What are your limits? And when people think that, they'll sometimes, I have gotten this from so many people I work with. They'll say, well, I don't have any limits, right? So it's always important to kind of get to the place where you actually know what is it that you need? What is it that you need? And so if you know what you need, you can actually tell people what your limits are.
Mm.
I don't know if that made sense.
It does make sense because, here's the thing about people. I'm going to say, I'm really opinionated, and I kind of speak for others sometimes, but people in recovery, a lot of girls I've dated and so forth, really have serious sexual trauma history. A lot of men have it too, but I've dated girls, and I feel like I married a couple of them, and this history is like based on this not having boundaries thing, right? Because like when I'm little and my sexual boundaries, my physical, emotional, whatever boundaries are violated, then I don't evolve properly. I'm traumatized, and I don't develop properly. I don't even have that space in my brain working. If you tell me, hey, Darren, what are your limits? Exercise good boundaries. I can nod, but I really have no idea what that means. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's plain and simple. I do this exercise. It's really, there's a gal named Betty Martin. She does this thing called the Wheel of Consent. I recommend people to check her work out.
Okay.
And she did this exercise, and I do this exercise when I work with clients. I work with men and women. Mostly I work with men around sex, sexuality, body issues. And I work with a lot of guys over 40. There's a lot of guys at a certain age where, sex becomes so, there's so many compartments that happen, right? And it's not talked about a lot. But I do this one exercise where you're just basically asking someone permission. May I touch your hand for my pleasure for 3 minutes? Let's just say for 3 minutes. And the person agrees, which, during an exercise, the person will agree. And then the second thing you ask the person, and this happens every single time, is what are your limits, right? I'm asking you, oh yeah, I want to touch your hand for my pleasure. And then I'll say, what are your limits? Automatically, instinctively, a person will go to well, I don't want you to do this, meaning like, oh, I want you to touch me this way, or I want you to touch me this way. But that wasn't the question. The question was, how can, may I touch you for my pleasure? Now, what happens is when you ask the person, what are your limits? A lot of times I'll get this from people. Oh, I don't have any limits. Yeah, do whatever you want. I mean, and so basically the way I acknowledge that is I say, so you just gave me permission to do anything that I want. I could break your fingers. I can scratch you. I can make you bleed. And so it's so important. And even in long-term couples, people getting to know each other or long-term couples, it's so important in regards to the body, to who we are as a sexual being, even just physical, just, kissing and making out. It's always important to let another person know what your limits are, right? Because then you have a place to go from there. Because the biggest thing that happens, and I know I'm very familiar with the fourth step. I've done plenty of them myself, and I've done plenty of sexual inventories. And one of the biggest things.
Let's say what that is for those who don't.
Oh, so like a sexual inventory is basically you write down all of. It's basically an inventory like you do your regular inventory, and you write down the names of all the people that you've had either sexual encounters or romantic relationships, and then you write down, how what part did you play or what happened, right? And then how did it affect the person? And I haven't done one in a bit, but I know the whole format of it. But it's pretty much like like the regular inventory that's in the big book, except we just talk about sex. And it's outlined in the big book, actually. I think it's 68, 69, one of those pages. And when and a lot of times when I have done those inventories, I've had a lot of like that mind-ready character defect. Like, I know what you're talking about, or I'm assuming I know what you're talking about. And so that is one thing that I always say, if you're going to have sex, I don't know if I could cuss on the show. But
you can say anything you want. I've got it listed as explicit.
Okay, so let me just tell you, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, so we use the F word as a verb, as an adjective. So sometimes when I get passionate, I use the F word. So I apologize to anybody who gets offended. You can pray for me. So the thing is, it's so important. It's so important to let your partner know what are your limits. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I'm thinking I'm the guy who's going to say, if I'm with a girl and she says, what are your limits? I'm going to say, whoa, what do you got? What are you thinking about? Because I've never even thought of having limits. I'm open to whatever. But if she's got some glimmer, I don't know if you remember an old school AA speaker named Bobby Earl. Well, he was back in the 80s. He used to say that, when he looked across the room and saw that one girl and she had that glimmer in her eye, and he knew it was love, but later he found out it wasn't love. That glimmer was psychosis. So if somebody's going to look at me with that look and say, what are your limits? I'm going to be like, I think I just got some new ones. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, being in recovery, an alcoholic or addict, whatever you call yourself, I always say the one thing that I've had that has been a challenge for me is just my picking ability. Is that I feel like some of us alcoholics and addicts just have bad pickers when it comes to romantic or sexual relationships. But the great thing is, if you can really acknowledge it, things get better. Things change.
Things get better. But I've learned that I'm actually an addict. I'm not just an addict that took drugs and then got sober and is now I am an addict. So any sensation, anything that brings me euphoria, homeostasis, anything that is even just good, anything that's just not pain, I can get hooked on. And so we could talk about that a lot. I'm already seeing that I'm already seeing and feeling that I love talking to you, and I want to know if we can do a couple of episodes on this, because I want to keep the listeners, happy with about a 20-minute thing. And I think that we can talk on a couple different levels. So And before, so we don't have to really worry about squeezing it all in, I think. I mean, let's continue a little bit on this. Um, and so in terms of being in recovery and having sexual limits, and maybe if I'm a teacher or if I'm in a position of power, or perhaps I'm let's look at it this way. I took Nikki Meyer's Yoga of 12-Step Recovery, Y12SR training, which was my first trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive yoga training. And I did Warriors at Ease as well, which is for vets, And, Nikki said something to me. I go, well, I always ask if I can give an adjustment in class. And she says, yeah, but if you have no boundaries, you don't know how to say no.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's here's the thing that I wanted to say in regards to your original question when you were talking about people in power or people in, and I always hate saying that word, but I think people that are looked at as teachers or put on a pedestal. I facilitated a lot of workshops and I'm around a lot of people, and I hold space in really sacred containers for couples or even just an individual person. And some of these containers are very, very sensual. And I always like to classify it that, there's one thing about being sexual and there's one thing about being sensual. It's like erection and arousal. They're two different things, but they're in the same family. And so I could not have done this or continue doing this if I didn't do some of the work. So there's a lot of people that have done they are spiritually fit functionally. They know the scriptures, they know how to get you to that meditative place, they know how to really, really channel God. But there are some fundamental things that need to be cleaned up. And like when they say in the program, you clean house, if there's any bit of doubt, of hesitation around oh wait, I still have stuff around sex that is making me feel uncomfortable or nervous, or I'm feeling like I have to hide something. Because I feel, for me, being a spiritual man, that I have to be constantly in this place of what, sometimes I don't know. And sometimes I still have stuff that baffle me. But holding space for people that look at me as a teacher, as an instructor, one of the biggest things that I do, and it's not, there's times where I get attracted, or there's some, I'm feeling aroused, but I just don't act on it, right? I just don't act on it. And I kind of separate it as, what, this is kind of like my work, right? I was having, I'm going to share something. I was having this little difficulty because lately, after holding space, I was feeling kind of like depleted, and I was feeling
compassion fatigue, I think.
Yeah, it was like this loneliness, and I posted out. I got really vulnerable, and I posted out on Facebook, and I had all these people that were, oh my God, are you okay? It was like triage almost, but I was kind of, what I was looking at was I was seeking someone that understood what I go through, because I hold space and all these people leave all floaty, which what happens at meditation retreats, it happens when you go to temple, it happens, you have a person that's leading and then everybody floats, right? But the person that is leading, that person that is in that teacher, that mentor, that a counselor role, if there is not a specific self-care that happens, then all of that stuff is just kind of jumbled. And so I was feeling that. And I talked to a really amazing guy, actually just recently, because he said, I saw your post, I want to talk to you, someone that does spiritual coaching and stuff. And he said to me, he goes, basically, he said the concept about the fat opera singer. He's like, you know why fat opera singers are so fat? Because they basically take people to God. Like during the performance, they take people to God. And then afterwards, everybody's floating, and that singer's all by themselves in the dressing room. And it's that point when we're in that dressing room where if I don't have this connection with God or whatever you believe in, then I'm going to be in this space of like, oh, wait a second, I need to do something with this. Whether it's like injure myself, injure others, do something, escape, and that's that point where I feel like people that are in these positions need to really just like ask for help. It's no different than in AA or NA. It's like, you know what? I don't know what's going on with me. Like, I'm really turned on by this person that I'm, counselor or whatever. I don't know what's happening.
Well, yeah, and you're supposed to, and it depends on what
Yeah.
If you're a psychiatrist, you're supposed to have a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a problem when I was teaching for 5 years or so, and then going, I did the 12-step Buddhist workshops and retreats, so people saw me in a certain way. But then I would go to AA meetings, and people were like sort of weird. Some people were sort of weird about like, oh, who do you think? You think you're a guru and blah, blah, blah. And they're kind of weird. They're waiting for me to do something, But the problem I really had was when you speak as an author and as a meditation teacher, well, when I speak as a yoga teacher in my classes, you have to have a conviction and authority and expertise. But in AA, when you're sharing, if you talk like that, you're kind of an asshole. I mean, I don't want to hear anybody pontificate. I want to hear you share your experience, strength, and hope. And so when I go into AA, I feel like I really am. I've painted myself into a corner spiritually, there in that respect, and I can no longer get my needs met the same way I could before I adopted that role of teaching spirituality to other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm supposed to have started a group for teachers only or something. And I know they have, like at Spirit Rock, they have a processing group, and that kind of thing for peer-led, for peer-to-peer if you're a teacher. But you do paint yourself into a corner somewhat. And I think there's also the tendency to get into if you're the kind of overachiever leader kind of person that has the charisma and the dynamics to attract groups of people who will listen to you, especially on sensitive, vulnerable things, then you might be kind of a narcissist. I mean, you kind of like, I never talk about politics. I'm just saying Trump has got to be a narcissist to get to be where he is. Yeah. And now we're unhappy because he's such a narcissist. Well, the narcissist doesn't have any, the true narcissist, the person with a narcissistic personality disorder doesn't have the empathy for others. And they maybe aren't not going to do the work. Maybe they're just predators. And maybe they look great and charming and sweet and fun and spiritual on the outside, but maybe they're really just fucking narcissists. And we got to really learn how to discern and how to know when we're in that kind of situation. And I have, you talk a little bit about it, but when you get that attraction and you say you got the broken picker, well, I have a number one. I've had this for decades, and unfortunately, I don't follow my own advice sometimes. When I go, hey, if I'm in love and I'm just jacked up and like all I want to do is like wake up and text that person and just be right, I need to run the other way because I don't get that jacked up in a vacuum. There's a reason why that person is inspiring me that way, right? And I have that kind of similar, and there's reasons for that, but I have that kind of similar thing. Like if someone is too slick, they're too slick. If someone is too likable, too quick, too charming, if you meet someone and 5 seconds later you just want to spend all your time with them, there's possibility there that you're being seduced and that you're setting yourself up for going into that kind of, right? So what would you say on any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, this is I've had a lot of personal research on all this. The thing is, with in regards to really having that, it's people get attracted to people in so many different ways. At this point in my life, I appreciate, and I am actually way more attracted to this almost candid vulnerability of people that can really own certain things around, like, I don't know, or I'm I'm feeling this way, you know. And so, you know, my way of attraction has changed. But in the past, there's been many times where, you know, the way I look at it is that when there's something that I see in a person that I need, right? There's like this need, like I don't have this, or there's this beauty, or there's this like innocence or childishness or extravagance or whatever, filling in blank. It's when I start feeling like and I'm not aware of it. That's the thing. I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware that like I'm trying to get this hole filled by this person. And I always, you know, now I just know it's like a puzzle piece. Like these people just come into my life and fulfill this puzzle, but it's not really, the ridges are not really like connecting, you know, like really well. You know, the thing is, communication is so core. I know it sounds so Californian and so cliche, but the thing is, it's like really gathering information when you're with a person. You know, and the more, you know, yes, there's the hormones that happen, the endorphins, everything that happens that kind of like, whoa, like this person's just like checking all the boxes. But I always tell people, like, you know what? It's no different than like meditation. You just pause, breathe, just kind of take a moment to like say like, okay, you know, what's happening? What's happening here? And just really kind of breathe into this person.
It helps.
You know, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice. You have to do it. That's why I tell a lot of people, I have a lot of single people, and I say, you know what? Just practice. Just practice. Like the fear, there's like there's two fears, the fear of being rejected or the fear of loss of control. I said, just practice a third thing. Like just practicing.
You know, we used to do an AA, and I still do it actually. Been doing it lately. Just ask a cute friend, hey, can you go on a practice date with me just so that I can remember how to interact with people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I came out of this relationship and I'm really lost. I don't even know what to say, and I don't want the pressure. And you just say, hey, look, I'm open right now, and I'm open to meeting new people and having new experiences without any necessarily like you're saying, you don't have to check all my boxes. I just want to practice being with people. You know, that's really powerful.
And other things, I can tell you, and other things, and if viewers know this, probably some people know this, it's on Facebook, it's on Meetup, it's all over. There are lots of things to do now, right? There are pujas, which is like, they're more tantric kind of, you know, where you connect with people. It involves a little bit of touch and movement and dancing. There's cuddle parties. There is like mixers, speed dating stuff. And now they've made all these different speed dating, you know, speed dating, tantra speed dating, you know, book reading, speed dating. And what happens is a lot of these, at least here in Northern California, because I'm up in the Bay Area, there's all of these events. They all like, there's so many cool people that are holding these spaces so sacredly, in the sense that like there's some guidelines. Like we're talking about consent. We're talking about permission. I mean, I love teaching people how to say no, you know, and not take it and not hearing no and not taking it personal. I mean, we can do a whole segment on this, but the reality is that there are so many things for people to do. And I hear this all the time. Oh, well, I just go home and I watch TV, or I just, you know, maybe I'll go meditate and then come home and watch TV, you know. And so there are all these ways to take contrary, you know, do contrary action. You know, the basics, the stuff we learn is that maybe I'm feeling afraid of rejection, but just do it anyway. Take that risk.
And I like, you know, I like being honest too. You know, like you have to get to know somebody a little bit enough to, but you know, really, I just really appreciate of myself. I just really appreciate being able to say, I'm kind of nervous talking. I mean, I'm attracted to you. I feel a little awkward. And then just kind of like, it's kind of like when you go give a talk and you gotta, to break the tension, you gotta say, wow, you guys, I'm super nervous up here, you know? And as soon as you admit that you're super nervous, everybody laughs because they know how that feels too. and you just break the tension a little bit. Honesty and communication, presence, mindfulness. You know, the DBT technique. One of the biggest pieces of the technique is mindfulness, and being aware and being present. If you listen to Eckhart Tolle, he'll tell you that the best therapy or whatever you can do for somebody is to really learn to be present and be present with them. And that stuff is all right up my alley. I mean, obviously, we're talking on the 12-Step Buddhist show. We've been doing a lot of spiritual, stuff for years. So I feel like we should stop here and segue over to groups and alternative practices and communities and things like that. If we could, would you like to talk more on another segment?
Sure, absolutely.
That sounds really good because I really like you. You're a really easy guy to talk to, and I really feel like I wanna learn more and I want to help people. And also, I'm going to ask you guys that are listening out there, and I'll do this in my closing notes, but I want to ask you guys to send email. Tell us where you can reach me, obviously, DarrenB.Littlejohn@gmail.com, Instagram 12-Step Buddhist, Facebook. I'm everywhere. I'm easy to find. Tell us how to reach you, and maybe if we get some questions or some comments, in the interim, then we have a little bit more material to work with, because I am going to talk to other people in the field, and other people in these areas, and I may have to do a bunch of different shows on it to try to come at it from different angles and really get some awareness going. But where can people contact you?
Oh, yeah. So I have a website. My website's metamorphicembodiment.com, or you could always email me at metamorphicembodiment@gmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook under this, either on Facebook at Metamorphic Embodiment or JoJo Bear. That's what I am on Facebook.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Well, like I said, I've really enjoyed it. We actually went to 31 minutes. I said it was going to be 20. And even with limits, I feel like we're just getting started. So those are my boundaries. I've got to assert them now. Thank you for making this touch online enjoyable. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, Darren, and thanks for all the viewers listening. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.